What would I tell my grandmother or my great-grandmother if she were still here? I would tell her it's difficult, even in modern times. I'm sure she went through her struggles that in some way are probably more difficult than now. But the struggles of now, despite maybe less physically draining, I think it's the war on the mind and how to keep your sanity, how to keep your peace, how to keep your self, and what that is sacred is challenging in these days. And as a mother, I find it a challenge to keep the innocence of my children and their minds whole, because when I do have a moment and I sit there and I watch their cartoons on Netflix, some of the things that the cartoons have to offer, I'm just like, wow, these kids are growing up really, really fast. And that's not a bad thing, but there has to be a balance, in my opinion. In a perfect world, I think children should be able to play and really develop without structure, without lines that are put upon them to stay in. And that's where creativity and the beauty of humanity lies. And they're 100% more intelligent than we are. They really are. But it's somehow beaten out of us as we just function in our everyday world. And I would like to tell my grandmother I'm proud of myself that I call myself an artist even now as a grown woman, because that was a goal of mine, to continue creating despite like it not being a financially stable choice of career. I want to set that example for my daughter. I think with the tech advancing so quickly and everything being analyzed and already known, creativity will be the most rare and the most valuable thing on the planet. So I'm going to teach my daughter that. And she is the most free spirit. I almost worry sometimes. I'm like, oh, is she going to be okay in the real world? But I know she'll find her way. I would also like to tell my grandmother that I have learned to choose what I want. I choose happiness. I choose the good. I choose to have integrity and trust and love, because I see the opposite outside of the nucleus that I've created for myself and the circle of people that I choose to put in my life. And I think that's a smart thing to do, to be very, very careful with who you share your energy with, because you want to be in spaces where it's mutual, where you give and receive. So there's always a transition of back and forth, and both people get fed and you grow together. Because I have been in those spaces where, it's draining, and I'm glad I'm conscious of that now. So I'm very specific. And time is so precious. So in choosing who I spend my time with, I feel like I'm living my life in a very conscious, specific way, where I'm not wasting time or wasting energy or doing things that I don't want. I'm going to be 40 in 3 years, so I want to choose happiness and and not waste time. I made up a quote myself that I said, if you're not loving, you're wasting time. And I think that's very, very, very true. If you're not loving, you're truly wasting time. And then another thing that I'm very conscious of now that I'm a little bit older is don't let life happen to you, make life happen. And we all truly have that power. Because I feel like, oh, I have that bill that I haven't paid, or so-and-so said this to me, or, they honked at me while I was driving and gave me the finger, and all of that. You have the choice to react to it. So that's where the power lies, right? Where you let that in and sink into where you actually give a reaction, or you literally have the choice to say, you know what, that's not for me, I'm moving on with my day. So I found power in living with that principle. So I say all those things hoping that my great-grandmother would be proud. I think also just trying to learn of my history and the history of my husband, and having children that are half African American and half Caribbean, Latin. I like saying Afro Latino. I have to teach them that history because they're not going to learn that in school, and I feel like that's a huge responsibility of women of color to have a whole other curriculum at home, because that is empowering to know who you are and where you came from and how beautiful our history is, how our people are God's people, and they had all the values that we could only strive to have today. And the fact that that was intimidating and had to be stripped in such a violent, horrible way is what happens even to this day, right? Like our society kind of builds you up to knock you down and then build you back up again, or not, or just, I feel like those struggles happen even now. But what I would say is, in my everyday life, I choose to be the world to my children, to be the world to my husband, to be the world in the business ventures that we have, and then be selfless and just be okay with giving the best part of you and the most beautiful part of you and expecting nothing in return. And then it's so crazy how the universe just gives you beautiful things in return anyway. And selflessness, I think it's expected from women, put your career on the side because you have this, you have to take care of your kids and your husband or whatever you have going on. But instead of looking at it as a negative thing, I think it's a gift. I think we do have that capability, probably more than men. And I guess that's why it's kind of expected from us, but we are so circular. So, versus like direct. So like we have that nurturing, never-ending, completely abundant capabilities, like Mother Earth. I just think like she's always going to have clean water somewhere. She's always going to have a mango tree full of fruit for somebody to eat. And the lie of not having enough is truly a lie. And I try to not entertain the lies And I also have to edit the lies for my children so they can live in truth. And that's challenging today. Challenging. So living in truth means being honest first with yourself. And that is probably the hardest thing to do. But I've seen it where people give themselves that space to be completely brutally honest with themselves, and it reciprocates. It just kind of unfolds in their life, and it makes their life better. It really does make their life better. Yeah, I just would like to tell my grandma that I hope she's proud of me. There's so many things that I still want to do, and the fact that I have this platform to share my thoughts. And now I'm just rambling. But what I would tell my granddaughter is, you're beautiful. You're beautiful, and your beauty will be offensive to many people. And that's not because of you. That's because they have that room to still grow and understand being in a space with such beauty. And they will get there. And you don't have to help them get there. But that's where that comes from. But the gift of beauty is also seeing beauty in other people, and I think beauty attracts beauty. So you will be in beautiful spaces always, and never ever let anyone tell you different. And again, recycling that very powerful message that you have all of the choice. Life is going to come at you, but you have the choice to entertain what is coming at you. And even more powerfully so, you could ignore what's happening and create what you want in your life. And breaking all the rules. Break all the freaking rules, because they are set by people who break them anyway. And if people are imposing rules that they're breaking, why in the world would you follow them? So make your own rules, follow your heart. You know, again, I say with technology, like, oh, you know, with technology, you get to connect with your loved ones and everything, but that's literally, in my opinion, taking you away from the natural connection that you have anyway. Because, for example, the way people have been taking the food industry and separating us from where our food comes from is probably the most horrible thing that they've done to humanity, because the information of the earth and the information of the sky is in the food that is grown, and that information needs to be in our bodies. And then our bodies take that information and multiply cells so we are where we need to be in the environment that exists. So I would say grow your own food if you have the opportunity to do that, and ground yourself in a world that tries to unground you. And I feel like even the English language doesn't have the vocabulary to express the beauty and sophistication of the emotional rainbow and the mental capacity of what a human being can do and say and be. So I'll leave that there, because I really don't know how to express that we're just incredible stardust, just trapped in these bodies, and yeah, just shine like the star that you are. And I strive to shine as bright as I can, unapologetically.